today we are here talking about the Syrian issue, or in other words, the Syrian civil war. Today we have several different good faces here. We have Dark Saf. He's a Turkish immigrant to America. I mean, no, just kidding. He's just Turkish. So Dark, say hello.
Hello.
And we have Felsom, the liberal American here. Felsom, say hello.
Hello.
And then we have me, Mr. Libertarian. So, freedom. Uh, all right, let's start with Dark. What do you want to start with?
I don't know what you want to start with. Should we look at the origins of the Civil War, or?
I mean, how about we start talking about the Kurdish question, because that's the biggest on your agenda.
But before we start into getting into the Civil War, we have to think about starting to begin with, don't we?
All right, so let's look at some of the causes. So like, what did cause the Civil War?
I think it's pretty complicated, but pretty straightforward at the same time. During the First World War, this territory, the entire Middle East essentially, like the Levant territories and the western coast of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Iraq and shit, was all under the occupation of the Ottoman Empire. However, after World War I, the Treaty of Sevres divided this territory up according to the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was an agreement made between France and Britain in 1915, which essentially said, yes, we're going to divide up these nations like this and that and this because resources, and we need the resources, and we're colonial powers, so we want to expand our empires. And when they did this, they did not really account for ethnic groups. They just accounted for resources and strategic positions, such as Kirkuk.
Along with Africa, they did that to Africa also, but.
Yeah, Africa also, yeah, exactly, and they also did it in South Asia, East Asia, etc. And then what got really complicated was the Turkish people. They didn't want this. Like, the Turkish people rebelled against the Treaty of Sevres because because the only territories they would have left was a seventh of the Ottoman Empire, and that little bit of the seventh part of the empire would be essentially colonized by the British. And the Turkish people weren't very happy about that. So in comes this thick boy called Mustafa Kemal, who would later be called the father of the Turks, and he started the Turkish War of Independence, which essentially kicked out all of the colonial powers, including Greece and Armenia, which also wanted the King of Arabia, and with the King of Arabia, between King of Arabia and Britain, which essentially said that we will create a Arabic confederation across the entirety of the Middle East. But that didn't, they just betrayed that idea completely. And the only thing that Saudi Arabia gained was Hijaz, which is essentially Mecca and Medina, the western coast of Saudi Arabia.
Because they were before then, they were the Emirate of Najd, or Najd, depending on how you say it.
Yeah. Exactly. And they were basically betrayed. And now ever since then, though, there has always been a grudge between the Arabs, the Saudis, and the British. Although nowadays, the Saudis kind of depend on the British, and the British depend on the Saudis for imports and exports of oil. But even then, there's still a grudge because the Saudis really wanted that territory, especially Palestine.
So the way this affected
there's also the Balfour Declaration, which essentially said that there would be a home of Israelis, but that idea would also be betrayed and only been enacted in 1947.
Well, the way this affected Syria is that the entire ethnicity groups in Syria were forgotten about, including there were some issues when it came to the fact that the Kurds weren't even thought of in this situation, so the Kurds felt left out. Which
not only the Kurds.
Yeah, the Kurds,
also the Assyrians and the Armenians.
Yeah, the Armenians, especially in Syria, felt left out, especially after what happened in World War I to their population due to the Ottoman government.
I guess you could say that, yeah, sure. You can call it genocide, man. I'm not gonna say anything against that.
Yeah. I mean, there are some Turks that will deny that, but
no, the entire Turkish government. Here's the thing: the complicated thing about I know that I'm gonna go off a bit of a tangent here, but I'm just gonna explain that situation very quickly. Okay, everyone recognizes it as a genocide because they see a high death toll, and because they believe that the Ottoman government is directly responsible for genociding them. Which is fair enough. They can think of whatever they want. I have no opinion on this because honestly, I just don't think there's enough evidence to prove either side of the argument. So I'm kind of yeah. Sometimes I go into it, and sometimes I go out of it. But either way, basically what the Turkish government says is yes, the Armenians suffered a shitload. Like they suffered a lot, but they claimed that the Ottoman government was not directly responsible for systematically killing them, which they then say therefore it cannot be declared a genocide because there's no intent. But that's open for debate, and it's
Yeah.
been heavily politicized, so it's very complicated now. So.
Well, the big thing is Turkish government says, hey, it's not our responsibility. It was the Ottomans.
No, not only no, they claim that the Ottoman government literally did, like they claim that the Ottoman government did not order the extermination of the Armenians, but the export, like not the exportation, but the, how do you call it, the expulsion of Armenians from the Russian front, because a lot of Armenians were joining the Russians to help them fight the Ottoman government.
Yeah, well, I mean, for an Armenian living in Turkey, it wasn't the best thing ever. But for if you
Well,
were,
if you lived in Western Turkey, as an Armenian, you were mostly left unharmed because you were not near any fronts,
yeah,
and they did not see you as a threat.
no, I mean they're
If
not
you
going to
lived
see it as a
in
threat if
Eastern
you're.
Anatolia, yep. That's a different story.
I mean, yeah, they're not going to see you as a threat if you're not, fighting. Falsman, can you fix your echo real quick, please?
What?
You got an
Your
echo.
I gotta go?
No, you have an echo.
Oh, sorry.
Like I can hear myself twice.
That's it. Okay, now let's get back on the Syrian issue.
Okay.
So ever since the El Assad family, right? Like now it's just Bashar al-Assad, but there was like an entire family of these people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I know the guy before. I don't remember his name, but
Yeah, I forgot his name as well. But like basically, they were basically like the Shahs of Iran, kind of, not really, but kind of. They basically wanted to make Syria more secular and democratic. Well, democratic. It was really just authoritarianism. But you get the point. The thing about democracy is that if you want true democracy, like rule by the people, rule by the mob, you really need anarchy. Like democracy is essentially just sugarcoating anarchy. That's true democracy.
well,
Rule by the people.
yeah, but they're like the full democracy is not. It's full democracy is like communism. It's just not possible. But like true, but technically we have republics. That's what republics are for. Is
Exactly,
they
republics,
bring stability to the idea of democracy. So that
but also nationalism, arguably.
I mean yeah, but
No, that brings us back to the Al-Assad family, because what they essentially try to do is something very similar to Hussein, but a little bit different. Hussein wanted to Arabize Iraq, right? He wanted to make everyone Arab or identify as Arab. What the Assads tried to do is try to make everyone Syrian. You're Syrian. You're not fucking Kurdish. You're not Assyrian. You're Syrian. You're Syrian.
you're not Assyrian, you're
Arabs, right?
Syrian. But
There's no Assyrian and Syrian are two different.
yeah,
Completely two different.
I know. This
Yeah.
way I said. But
I get your joke, but it's fine. Screw you. And when he did that is the Muslims kind of got triggered because of Muslim, like there's been a pan-Islamic movement, like pan-Islamism has been exploding since the 90s.
Pan-Arabism.
Pan-Arabism and pan-Islamism. Pan-Islamism is essentially all of the Islamic nations in one country or one confederation, like united in one way or another, right?
Yeah, but
these
that's
people
because
got
the
mad
Arab
because-
Spring in Tunisia was Pan-Arabism. That was the
Yeah.
entire idea behind
Exactly, but like the thing about this, the pan-Islamists essentially said, we can't have this because this excludes other Muslims. We can't identify as Syrians, and then
because
hardcore identify as Syrians,
the
and
Syri-
then fucking connect with the Iraqis.
the Syrian
or with the
government was
Iranians.
the Shia Islamic group.
Yeah,
I'm mother.
and then what the
I see it. Quiet.
like ISIS is essentially Al Qaeda,
I'm
essentially
screaming, mother.
like a branch of Al Qaeda.
There are small skirmishes like 13 and 14, but then I think it like full blown started like 15.
Yeah,
Like there's the ISIS came in I think like 2015.
yeah. Now here's the thing.
The
Kurds,
the FSA was already fighting the Syrian government like long before
yeah, I know that.
the ISIS came along.
Here's the thing. The YPG was established, I think, 2010. But
Yeah, well they were established as a small separatist movement at that point. They didn't pick up steam until the FSA came along and started fighting Syria.
Yeah.
Syrian government.
Since the 19th of July 2011, the YPG has been a thing. Now, here's the thing about the YPG. They saw the opportunity in the civil war because ISIS was concerned with the FSA and the Free Syrian Army. The Free Syrian Army was also concerned with both of them, and then, you know, everyone is concerned about themselves. And then the YPG is like, let's complicate the situation even more, basically.
Well, then America started supporting the YPG, which
because he saw them as saw them as less, you know, so radical. But
yeah, well, the issue with that is the Turkish have been starting to support the FSA in recent times. So
no, they have really hardcore. No, that's not the issue. The issue is that the YPG has grown so much that they're not even occupying Kurdish territories anymore. Like, they have gone way beyond the boundaries that they plan to expand. They said they're not going to go ladies, which they have, evidently.
well, they founded a different organization there. They founded, I think it was the YPF over there.
Yeah, I think it's
or YP8.
It's like the SDF, right?
I think the SDF was half of it. No, SDF is Syrian. No. I thought the SDF was Syrian Defense Force. Or no, was it?
No, Syrian is the Syrian Democratic Force. Something like that.
No, it was the Syrian. It was the Syrian Arab Army. So that's what it was. The SAA.
No, the Syrian Democratic Force is still Kurdish.
Ah, yeah. Well, I was thinking of the government forces, or the Syrian Arab Army.
The SDF occupies, I think, the eastern part, actually. Wait.
The YPG occupies the desert, but
the desert, yeah, west of the Euphrates.
No, they occupy the east half.
Is it the east?
Yeah, they occupy the east. The other group occupies the west.
So SDF occupies the left. I'm not sure because on all of the maps it's just the Kurdish forces. Okay. It's not saying much anyway. So yeah, like what Turkey sees the threat in the YPG and the SDF is that there is substantial evidence that these insurgents, how do you say, they supply and train the PKK, which is already recognized as a terror organization by the US, NATO, and EU. Not by the UN for some godful reason, and they've been basically fighting the Turkish government since 1978, and they were known for blowing up bombs in hospitals and killing infants, you know.
Okay, the YPG
to kill 40,000 people.
PJ is the woman's branch of it. Okay.
Yeah. Basically. And then here's the thing: the YPG was also established theoretically. This has not been confirmed, but was also established by Öcalan indirectly. Öcalan is the person that founded the PKK, but he's been under arrest since 1999. But either way, he's accused of also founding the YPG indirectly within prison because he can still send out letters and stuff. And what has happened is basically in 2011, this boy popped up and took advantage. Yeah, and we were talking about that. And now they've grown so much that the US support has grown so much that the US has proposed, or at least theoretically proposed, that they would make a defense force across the Turkish border. Quote unquote defense force, right? And Turkey sees this as a direct provocation. Because if you start militarizing your border with another sovereign state, and shooting rockets over the border into just randomly, by the way, they've just been randomly shooting rockets across the Turkish border into cities and stuff. And recently they killed a 17-year-old girl in the attack, right?
I mean,
and then it's a direct provocation. Like they're asking for it. They're basically asking for war.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind these people have been oppressed for centuries. They don't know anything but oppression. So what happens when you oppress people for so long? They fight back, and then they fight back oppressively. They oppress other people because that's all they know. If you look at Thailand, they fought. There was a war between we're fighting for one side's fighting for a king and the other one's fighting for a tyrannical prime minister that's basically a dictator at the same time. And I
understand that.
There's basically riots there.
Here's the thing, though. Just because they've experienced oppression in the past doesn't justify it.
It doesn't. But they get into that mindset of this is okay because everyone else has been doing it to us. So you gotta feel a little bit of sympathy for them when it comes to like how badly they've been treated over the centuries. Like
I really don't, because the Ottoman Empire has given them autonomy. They have given them the freedom to speak. They have given them got like they have actually given them so much autonomy that they were.
Well, I mean,
essentially
it also
Kurdistan.
depended on which sultan was ruling the Ottoman Empire, because the different sultans reacted differently to the Kurdish threat. Or
Yeah, but like at the
Kurdish.
very end, like during the very ending centuries,
Yeah, that's
since
because the Ottomans were losing power. That's the only reason they gave power to the Kurds.
No, the last 3 centuries, by the way.
On the
Three centuries ago, in 1600, they were still going strong, the Ottomans, and they still give substantial autonomy to the Kurds.
well,
The thing is, with the thing with the Ottomans is that when they saw that they're losing power, they became less tolerant, because they knew that after Napoleon, and after the rise of nationalism, and after the idea of nationalism spread across Europe, they knew that they had to establish an Ottoman identity, like an Ottoman national identity.
yeah.
And this is why the Young Turks were like really horrible when it comes to minorities, because they tried to force this identity on the minorities.
Who are the Young Turks again? I forget.
They're the ones that overthrew the Sultan in the Young Turk Revolution in 1907 in order to establish basically a quote-unquote Western secular state. Well, not really secular, but more westernized state with a republic and stuff like that. But they failed miserably, as seen. And when they tried to force this on them, like they thought that if you could force them quickly, this identity on them, they wouldn't revolt because they would, have a closer ties to the Ottoman government. But what essentially happened was they provoked not only the Kurds at this point, but they also provoked the Arabs. And the Arabs, especially the Syrians, were very loyal to the Ottoman government until they tried to force this identity on them.
Yeah, that's because when you try to take away somebody's culture, then that becomes an issue. It's like me going to Turkey and saying, oh, you guys now have American culture. You can only speak English.
You guys are Greek.
Yeah, you guys are Greek now. You guys can only speak Greek. You guys can only wear Greek clothing. You guys can.
That's the weird way of spelling Constantinople. Yeah.
You can now only dress like Greek, speak like Greek, speak the Greek language. Yeah, that'd be you'd be a little angry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's why the Kurds were angry, but.
My dude, this is why I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that what the Ottomans did was justified, by no stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to give you context, right?
Yeah.
But like, so the Ottomans did not give them autonomy because they were losing power. They gave them autonomy because they were powerful and they did not want to lose this power. But when they started to lose power, they became desperate. They became really desperate to retain as much of that territory as long as possible. And this is kind of why the Turks nowadays have quite a lot of grudge towards the West, because Britain and France helped the Ottoman Empire against the Russians during the Crimean War, but then essentially backstabbed the Ottoman Empire during the Russo-Turkish War and during World War One. World War One, the Russians declared war, by the way.
That's because they wanted in the Crimean War. The goal was to try to quell the Ottomans, but let's or not quell the Ottomans, quell the Russians, because the Russians were getting too powerful. But let's get back on topic, because we've gotten to Crimea now and Russia, which is not any. Although Russia, yeah, Russia, very important nation in this conflict due to the fact that their support for the government of Syria has been undying and loyal.
This is something very important to take note. The Turkish forces have recently attacked the Syrian governmental forces because the Syrian government has accepted to help the Kurds against the Turkish Operation Olive Branch. They're not friendly.
I don't think the Turkish should have ever set foot into Syria, because there's so many diplomatic issues with that. Because there's Russian troops in Syria. B, there's American troops in Syria, and the YPG is currently backed up by the Americans, so or by us.
But here's the thing. Turkey knows that the U.S. and Russia won't declare war on Turkey. That would be disastrous. They know exactly that when Turkey invades, they will get them out of here, okay? They will just go away, and that's been proven. There were Russian forces in Afrin helping the YPG for some god-awful reason. Again,
They're the best human rights record, especially the Turkish government is not great either with it.
But when you compare the Turkish government to all of the other actors in this war,
yeah, I'm not saying.
With the exception,
well, I mean, America doesn't even have the best human rights. So, if you if you look into Vietnam enough, America looks terrible because
just
we.
like look at the list of international violations.
Yeah, although the Vietnam War was a fumble for the America because we a failed in it, and b
Not
we.
only that, but the Australians also went in there.
Yeah,
And they
well,
got
the
raped.
but the American war crimes were outstanding
Yeah.
to hear about. It's like they they shot POWs, which is one of the biggest violations you can do.
Well, and they just went into villages, said, yeah, there's Mekong in here, and they just shot up the entire village, including the disabled women and children. So
Yeah, but my point is not to worry about the background behind the Vietnam War, but just like nobody's ever perfect when it comes to war. There's nothing ever perfect.
But here's the thing. To what extent is to what extent is it just collateral damage? And to what extent is it, like, I don't know how to phrase this without sounding like some...
Yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean, though.
Right? Like, there's a limit, right?
Yeah, like,
some
yeah,
of the
if
things
you
are
if a few
understandable,
civilians
other things are just plain out.
if a few civilians die in a bombing or die in like when you drop bombs on a village, maybe like 5 men, maybe like 2 civilians die, then that's not that big of a deal if you kill like 3 times as many terrorists
Not
at
to
least.
undermine the lives, of course. Not to undermine the lives. Like, there's
Yeah.
still human lives.
Yeah, they're still human lives, but I mean, like,
There's a difference between targeting civilians and the civilians being a part of the collateral damage.
yeah,
And
I'm
there's
like,
also
if
a
you're
difference between
specific.
how well the
if you're
government treated the collateral damage and how well they organized not to do collateral damage.
if you're specifically aiming at civilians, there's an issue there. But if it's an accident, then well, accidents do happen during war, regardless. If you're indiscriminately bombarding a city like the SAA does, the Syrian Arab Army, the Syrian army does, then.
Or how the Kurds just randomly shoot rockets into cities.
Well, I mean, there's going to be civilian casualties with an artillery bombardment, regardless of what it is, like rockets, artillery, mortars.
That's why Turkey's trying to use planes as much as possible, F-16s, because you tend to be a lot more accurate than artillery or rocket.
Yeah, America does precision drone strikes in Syria all the time. It's like it's nothing uncommon.
I mean, drones are basically the national bird of Syria at this point.
Yeah, if you didn't know, if you looked up national bird of Syria on Google, it actually shows a bunch of drones. I'm not kidding. Have you done that? It's great. Like literally, it's just all just drones. I'm gonna move Inverted in here just in case he's on. Inverted, are you here? Hello? Okay, he's done here. Just moving him back now. Did it.
Nice. No, but here's the thing. The Turkish government, there's no real substantial evidence that they are actually targeting civilians. But when it comes to the YPG, that's a different story. If you look at what they're doing to the Syrians, they're known to not like any non-Kurd. They're known to put extra tax on Turkomans and any non-Kurd in Afrin right now, for instance. They extra tax them, and when it comes to the Assyrians feel really uncomfortable with the Kurds. They prefer the Syrian government over the Kurds because the Kurds are historically and in the modern day known to really discriminate against the Syrians.
Well, you see,
kill systematically.
The thing with that is, you got plenty of issues with that. The main issue is that like the Kurds, like I said, have been. All they know is oppression. If you put people through oppression, then all they're going to know is how to oppress people, especially if they get a whiff of power. But that doesn't excuse it. That doesn't excuse it. But
exactly, yeah, that's not my point. Though.
But you see, the thing is the Syrian army. I would prefer the Kurdish over the FSA any day, because the FSA is like allied with like I think it was like al-Shiraz and al-Hazira, because the al-Hazira is like a full-blown terrorist organization.
Not the Turkish one, not the Turkish-backed rebels.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Turkish-backed rebels could say, "Oh yeah, we're with the Turkish. We're not terrorists." Then turn around as soon as they get power, and then start to fight it. Because
there's no evidence to suggest that they are terrorists as of this moment.
That's basically what I know, but that's basically what happened with the I forget what the organ in Afghanistan when we supported.
Here's the thing.
I forget. Wait, was that Afghanistan or the organization that America backed in the Soviet Afghan War?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
The
It wasn't the Taliban, it was
Mujahideen.
something
The
else.
Mujahideen.
Taliban. It was a
Yeah,
different
it was
Taliban.
Mujahid, yeah.
No,
So
we backed the Mujahideen, and they split into two different
here's the thing.
factions, and one of them was
That's
the
my main problem.
Taliban, which took over the
That's
country.
also, that's also my main issue with the Americans supplying the Kurds. Because when you look at any media outlet, they say, oh, Kurds are so democratic, oh, they're so feminist, shit like that. But when you look at the actual demographics of Turkey, for instance, and then you look at the conservative votes, and then you look at the honor killings that are happening in Turkey, they're almost all exclusively Kurdish. The Kurdish in Turkey, for instance, are literally the least democratic, the least liberal, the least
Well,
feminist.
The Turkish have a big nationalist movement though. Like, and those are all Turkish people that are like the big nationalists. There, one of your presidents was nationalist not too long ago. I forget what his name was. I don't know Turkish presidents, so.
No, but are you talking about Erdogan?
Yeah, Erdogan is a heavily nationalist president. He's not in any way.
He's a different, but it's a different. It's not like the nationalism that you saw with Ataturk. It's completely different. It's Islamic. What do you call it? Nationalism. And the thing about Erdogan
Yeah,
is that 50% of the Kurds vote for him.
Why would they vote for him though? That's the weird part.
Because they are Muslim before they are Kurdish. The thing is.
Yeah, but Erdogan's
Kurds,
basically been supporting the oppression of the Kurds though. That's the weird part.
No, he hasn't actually. Under Erdogan, the Kurdish language was unbanned. Kurdish schools were opened. The Kurds can speak their language freely now in some private sectors as well, which they wouldn't be able to do before. Erdogan gave them a Kurdish press, and he gave them a Kurdish radio station. He gave them a Kurdish TV station, like several, not just a, right? Several of them. And he gave them more rights than most Turkish governments ever have. First of all. Second of all, the other opposition parties that we see in Turkey are either weak, they can't really, they're just uncharismatic, there's just no charisma. Like, if you hear the Davutoglu speak, the main opposition, you just want to shoot yourself. Like, he's so uncharismatic. He's like, right? And if you look at the HDP, which is like essentially the Kurdish party in Turkey,
Yeah.
they were a year ago accused of supporting the PKK because their supporters, I mean, like their people at the top, were found at PKK funerals praying. They were literally they were caught with guns, delivering them to the PKK. Okay, so like the Kurds don't like the PKK, by the way. Most of the Kurds nowadays despise the PKK. The PKK and the YPG, what they do is they go to Turkish villages and cities sometimes, and other Kurdish villages all across Syria and Iraq, and they take the children away from the families and recruit them into their army. And there's already been like a human rights watch on this.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The majority of Kurds in Turkey at least do not support the PKK. The majority of Kurds in Turkey don't even support independent Kurdistan. Most of them either demand autonomy or demand a more democratic Turkey. And this is off of a survey which I can find.
Well, you see the thing with Turkey is it's kind of like a minor, like they have like Turkey has a big issue with corruption, whether you can accept that or not. Because like you said last night, you said to get out of the draft you could just pay a government official, like that.
You could theoretically, yeah.
That's a big issue, because if you can do that, then imagine what else you could do to pay when you pay off.
Here's the thing. Turkey, when compared to Syria, Iraq, Iran, Russia,
Yeah,
Bulgaria, and Greece,
you can't compare.
It's like nothing.
Yeah, well, you can't like those nations are basically dead nations at this point. Like,
yeah, but they're in the surroundings.
Sorry, Putin. Sorry, Putin, but your government's way too corrupt.
I can actually look at the corruption list right now, but the thing is, those are basically the options the Kurds do have. Because most Kurds can't afford a plane ticket. They can't afford migration, and they sure as hell don't have time for that. Right? And most of the Kurds in Syria and Iraq, they don't go to Syria or Iraq or Iran, they just go straight up to Turkey. Because you know that Turkey has a lot better life opportunities than all of those countries.
Well, you see, the big thing is with the Syrian crisis is immigration. Like, this is the main issue, especially for America. You know what I mean? Because America has had its fair share of planes running into towers, but
Yeah, no, 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 sure.
But yeah, I don't personally like immigration. There's plenty of people that do, especially when it comes to Arab and Muslim immigration.
Actually, I'm looking at the corruption index right now. Turkey, as of 2017, it's the 75th least corrupt nation out of 175 countries,
It's not an
which
achievement,
is
but sure.
which is pretty corrupt. But then
Yeah.
you look at countries like Syria. Let's go with Syria. 173 out of 175. So,
Wait, who's more corrupt than Syria? What? I want to know.
Um,
I want to know.
probably like
Probably Angola.
probably maybe North Korea, but then again they can't really find those
And
statistics.
and
There's no corruption index for Iraq.
and Angola's probably ridiculous though,
Yeah.
because you can pay people in Angola to do it.
is ranked.
Oh.
Bulgaria is wait, fuck.
Because I know in Liberia you can pay like $50 to get a warlord out of prison, which is just like what?
Oh, what?
50 American dollars
The
gets
most corrupt nation.
50 American dollars gets a warlord out of prison in Liberia because they're so poor. They're so poor. 50
Welcome to
American
Liberia.
dollars is like I think like
Somalia.
50,000 in their country. Who?
Somalia is the next
Oh yeah,
Somalia.
that makes sense. You see, Somalia is like Somalia is a mess. Let's just say that.
But like Turkey is actually like their military.
They have
Province.
they have warlords that would eat dead babies before they went into combat. Which
Nice.
which yeah. There's even
Africa is very progressive.
Liberia was the only American colony in Africa, so
It wasn't really a colony. Oh well.
it was, yeah.
Was it?
We bought it off I think Britain and then let it go independent because America attempted to move all of its slaves back to Africa. That was what Liberia was. Is when after the Civil War Lincoln tried to move all the slaves. Lincoln was actually racist, believe it or not. The guy who liberated
Thomas
this.
Jefferson was racist. He had like
No,
2,000 slaves, I think, or something.
no, Thomas Jefferson actually released his slaves. He wasn't as bad. Of course,
He had slaves nevertheless. Like I don't dislike him, but
if
certain context.
if you at that time if you didn't want slavery, you wanted segregation. So it's kind of like it.
It's kind of like the releasing of the serfs, I guess. Okay, we're like going to the serfs now.
My screen's messing up.
Themselves is like pretty radically Muslim.
Yeah, well, in Western society, there's no room for that.
Even in Turkey.
Yeah, even in Turkey, there's no room for that. Like, if you go to Turkey and Turkey's very Muslim, but they're not like radically Muslim.
Well, officially it's a secular republic. Now here's the thing.
Yeah,
There's a
officially,
very
but
good reason. There's also legally, like, you can't accuse someone. You can't, like, for instance, arrest someone for being a Christian. Or you can't arrest
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
according to Sharia law. Like, if you try to enforce Sharia law in Turkey, you're getting arrested. I'm just telling you right now, you're gonna be accused of being a terrorist and you're gonna be arrested. Anyway, that's off the point.
yeah, it's Muslim as its main religion. There's freedom of
like
religion.
France.
There's freedom of religion in America, and Christian's the main religion. But it's
Yeah,
still
exactly.
secular
The
state.
the thing about Turkey, there's a very good reason why Syrians are not allowed to go into the refugees are not allowed to go into the premise of the three major cities, being Izmir, Ankara, and Istanbul, and that is because of the fear of terror attacks and the fear of just flooding these seas even more.
Well, you see, a
Now,
big
I
thing
live-
is immigrants can be hired for cheap labor, which we could have like the like young citizens doing because teenagers don't need to have like a high paying job. You know what I mean? If you're still living with your mother, you don't need a high paying job. I mean, it'd be nice to get a little bit of money on the side.
true.
Which like especially in America is like one of the main things for people who are A, poor, B, just young in general, is that we work in fast food restaurants a lot of times.
Hello, McDonald's. I want to start career here.
but now there's the issue of immigrants are illegally working in fast food restaurants. They're illegally working wine fields in California.
Yeah.
So they're taking easy jobs that could just as easily go back to our economy. But
And accuse anyone who opposes them as being a racist against.
yeah, in California at least. But in my state, if you were to call that out, then you'd be. I mean, not maybe not my city, but my state you would be, because my city is like liberal. And my state, on the other hand, is conservative. Which cause Missouri, it's like it's like center.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. Okay.
Or people nickname it Missouri because you know it gets weird.
Misery. It's so miserable.
Yeah, there's really nothing to do after you do everything. Which
There's not much to do after you do everything. Curtis,
well, I mean it's not that hard. It's not that hard to do everything out here though. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's only like
I got you, homie. I got you.
there's only like 2 big cities, so it's like.
Meanwhile, in Turkey, we have a city that has bigger population than Greece.
I mean, yeah, but like the city that I live in used to be the 12th largest city. Now it's in the United States. Now it's like 59th. I mean, it didn't lose population. Just all the other cities grew a lot faster.
Noise.
I mean,
Like New York.
no, New York's always been big. It's always been like the biggest city in.
Yeah, but it grew substantially still.
Like,
okay, we're going off topic again. So, Syrian civil war, my dudes.
But yeah, we were talking about the immigrant thing. That's why we got off topic.
The main thing, I can kind of sympathize with the European right wing that the Arabs are kind of being dicks in Europe.
Yeah.
Because they are. Like, let's be brutally honest. Like, Sweden is a complete.
Sweden's a mess. Sweden is a mess.
It's the rape fest of Europe right now.
That's why I wanted to invite the Swedish guy earlier, is because I knew he would have some words to say. Because the northern Swedish are highly socialist and they like them, but the southern Swedish are beginning to be a little more nationalist, because it's kind of like, we see the immigrants, you guys don't, so screw off.
Yeah. The thing about this,
it's like southern Sweden's like, we see the immigrants, we have the issues here.
When you get a bunch of people from a third world country, excuse my language, but it is from a third world country.
Fourth world.
Fourth world, yeah. Now it's a fourth world, basically. But
it's basically
because the thing is, the poorer a country is, the more radically religious they are. The more radically religious you are, the more you demand the laws of your religion in your country. The more you demand mosques or churches or temples or fucking whatever, right? And this is what's happening in Sweden. When they came to Sweden, there's like there's no Sharia law, there's no Islamic law. It's all secular. Muslims don't like secular, so a lot of them don't, at least like a very good chunk of them don't.
Well, you see the big thing with like, just to prove to you how rare a working democracy is. We can go to the second republic ever to be created inside the New World. Let's go to the Republic of Haiti. As soon as they broke free, the guy that was supposedly democratic instituted a dictatorship.
Yeah.
So like,
the thing is, like, democracy itself, people say it's very moderate, right? Very moderate ideology.
No, it takes a lot.
It's the most radical ideology you can think of. If you think about it, like, how radical is the idea of giving some people, like, just your entire population, the power to overthrow you? That's really radical. Because if you give your people the power to get you out of power, then you are under the threat. And when you're under the threat, then your natural cells are going to go like, I don't want to go out of power. And when you start getting this like this fear of not wanting to lose power,
you see, America was a miracle in itself. Like how well it worked out.
But the thing about America is that it's like they were under genuine oppression, right? Like they knew what oppression means.
Well,
oppression means, they know that they don't want to do it on other people.
The Haitian Rebellion also knew what it was, because the Haitian Rebellion was all slaves. They were slaves. They rebelled against France.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing about Haitians is that they didn't bring the Enlightenment ideals. They didn't know about the Enlightenment ideals.
No, the Enlightenment ideals is how they wanted to revolutionize.
Were very educated.
Yeah,
Thomas Jefferson was very educated. Adam Smith.
You see, the people of Haiti knew about these ideas, but they weren't like fully educated in them, like how to do them.
Obviously not. Because like the thing about the Enlightenment, people argue that it didn't ever exist like the Renaissance, right? Because it didn't really spread across the entire globe. When it comes to the Renaissance, for instance, only 5% actually experienced it.
Well, the
The
Indians
rest,
had their own Renaissance before, like after that too, like the nation of
in
India.
general, the Hindus in general, the
Yeah.
Hindus suck. But the thing about the Hindus is that from day one they were pretty secular. Like from day one they were very accepting. From day one they were probably the least warmongering
Also
religion.
the Muslims in India were also very accepting because they were the most secular Muslims. The
The
Indian
Pakistan,
sultanates.
well, not the Pakistanis, basically the Pashtuns.
I'm not saying the Pakistanis, but like there were other Indian sultanates that got set up. Like there's Bahrain, which was in the central India, which was set up as
Wait, you mean
after
the British
invasion,
Raj, or are you talking like before the British Raj?
but like long before the British Raj.
Oh, okay. But
I'm talking about like the 1444 and later kind of like
oh, okay. So like basically when the Turkic tribes also took all power in India. And over.
like before the Mughals came in, like even
Yeah,
before that.
okay, fair enough.
Not the Mongols, the Mughals, which are
The
two way
Mughals.
different things. The Mughals were Muslim invaders of India, and they were oppressive, but not as oppressive as some other things before. I mean, not. I mean, they weren't that oppressive compared to other Muslim societies. Like the Indian sultanates were at heart Indians, and they knew that they couldn't couldn't hold control if they were
Here's the thing. Here's the thing
oppressive.
about Islam. Here's like the main thing about Islam.
It kind of bends to where it is. Like if it
No, but the thing about Islam is that there was never one centralized. Like you could argue that the caliphs were one centralized, like one leader
yeah,
of
but that was
Muslims.
a long time ago.
But that was no, not only was that a long time ago, but it wasn't really true, because this one Muslim leader wasn't the leader of the Shias, it wasn't the ruler of the Alawites, it was
Well,
only the ruler of the Sunnis. And then
we
when you have only one ruler of one sect
no,
of the
you see the original caliph was just under Islam because the original caliph was Muhammad. So
well, technically, yeah, sure, but like
yeah, that was
no,
the only time they were
didn't
actually
the
united.
Umayyad Caliphate only come after Muhammad?
Or no. Muhammad's conquest took over. I think just or like Arabia. Like they were the first caliphate, but they weren't that big.
Yeah, and then
They
the
were the
Umayyads
ones,
came and
and then
blew it up,
and then the
basically.
Umayyads came in and were like, nah, no fam, this is my religion, this is
This-
my land. Which,
Mm,
by the way, the Syrian conflict goes all the way back to the Umayyad days, when the Umayyads converted most of them to Islam by force, the Syrians, and migrated people in from Arabia to make them more Arabic.
yeah, basically. That's a shame though. Like I find it a big shame. So,
Like
don't,
the
no, because the
Assyrians
thing is,
and the other people that were there got kicked out as
they didn't
basic.
get kicked out. They were just forgotten.
Yeah,
Because
they
when you have mass migration, then the Assyrians are forced to also marry into the Arabic families and stuff,
yeah they
and then
basically
their
got
language
integrated.
slowly disappears. That's why you only see like a tiny minority of Assyrians today in Iraq, in northern Iraq. The thing about Arabization is it's basically a earlier form of a nation state almost, because now you have a bunch of people who are not even Arabs who identify as Arab.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is kind of a shame, but it's also quite amazing. Like this phenomenon of nationalization of an entire peoples is pretty fascinating if you think about it. Like the mass scale of it.
I mean,
Because
you see,
before
that's why people who go to America, they eventually think of themselves as American. Otherwise they
they're
could
Germans mostly, most are German or Norwegian or
British,
French
British.
or British or French as well.
A lot of
No,
the a lot of the East Coast is are English. A lot of the Midwest, which is where I live, is German. I'm German in descent. But
yeah, exactly, and like what is it? The New Orleans, like Central South.
yeah,
bits of
the South is highly French influenced and Spanish.
And North is I think there's parts of states which are basically just Norwegian. I think two states in the north.
North
northern-
Dakota
Yeah,
has
something like that.
North Dakota has a big Scandinavian population. It's weird.
North Norwegian.
They're all blonde up there, and they're it's weird.
It's really funny though. Like it's kind of ironic how all of the Norwegians are
And
still
also we have a extreme minority of Irish people Because Ireland has a bigger or Ireland has a smaller population than the amount of Irish people in America.
Nice.
There's more Irish people in America than there are in Ireland, which is the weird part.
It's not weird actually. There's more Mongolians in China than Mongolia. There are more Turkish Cypriots in Britain than there are actually in North Cyprus.
Well, that's because they migrated out.
It's not just migration, but they were forced out by
Yeah.
EOCA and all of these other terrorist organizations that targeted them, which was horrible. Like Cyprus is a whole other story.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Cyprus,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah. We'll
Like
have
Cyprus is probably like it's probably among the biggest just massacres and just among the biggest.
We'll have
events
we'll have
in the
another
20th century.
yeah we'll have another 30-minute debate on like Cyprus in the future too, because Cyprus is a big mess. But yeah, there is also one big issue when it comes to but there's also other things that can be issues when it comes to I forget what I lost my train of thought too.
Nice.
So, alright, well, are you dressed? What are you wearing today? It's kind of hot today. I wouldn't.
So your mom?
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of Irish people that are, or there's more people of Irish descent in America than there are in Ireland.
and they're still bloody Catholic, right?
And there's I think like a fifth as much, or like there's like 5% as many Germans in America, people of German descent in America as there are in Germany.
Nice.
So there's like 30 million people of German descent in like the Midwest alone. 30 or 40.
It's mad. The thing about Turkey,
Well, you
like,
see, there's
the entire Middle East, it's like it's impossible to trace people back by like genetics alone. Like this, it's so hard to it's so difficult to find samples of Hittites. It's so difficult to find examples of ancient Mesopotamians. It's so difficult to find like genetics of Assyrians. Like we call people Assyrians today, but like we don't know if they're actually Assyrian, like 100% Assyrian descent. Like the Assyrian government didn't exist for like 2,000 years plus.
Yeah, well, you see, thing is even with like Americans, my ancestry is so mixed up because I have Scottish, I have British, or I just have British and well, British includes Scottish, but I have British, I'm Norwegian, I'm like a lot German, mostly German. So it gets mixed in eventually. You know what I mean? Like, and it's hard to trace back an ancestry where like there's no records because we fought in so many wars and so many different things that when somebody dies and doesn't tell their story to their children before they die, it gets, you never know who's who.
Exactly.
And there's a big problem with the Jewish population too. Is nobody knows, like a lot of Jewish people don't know what their ancestry is because a lot of their people were wiped out.
No, during the Holocaust, by the way, like people
yeah.
The Holocaust
In general,
was the first time Jews were persecuted.
No, it's not by a long shot.
Like this persecution, this history of persecution, massacre.
They were first pushed out of
before even the Roman Empire.
They were first pushed out of like Africa and Egypt and like into the Holy Land, then pushed out of the Holy Land by the Muslims, and then pushed out of like Poland or the Western Europe and South Europe by Christians, and then they eventually, a lot of them settled down in Poland because the Polish were more accepting than other people.
And also the Turks, ironically.
I mean, the Turks were like the only Muslim nation which didn't push them out for a while. And like I said,
we're the ones that accepted them during the Reconquista.
It kind of also depended on which sultan was in charge too.
Well, no, most of them until I think the last ones accept. No, because the thing is, the hate towards Jews in the Muslim world today didn't exist until Zionism. Like when the idea of Zionism, the idea of a Jewish state, during World War II and after World War II, when it just blew up,
Well, they didn't hate them, but they also still expelled them from their countries in like the early days of Islam. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, under the Ottoman Empire, for instance,
but everybody did that.
No matter what ethnic group you came from, you were not identified as your ethnic group. You were identified by your religion, meaning that if you were a non-Muslim, you would have to pay an extra tax, and we would leave you alone. Turks would leave you alone, unless of course you were like some rebel and we would massacre you. But that's it. Sorry.
You know, you wanted your religion to be more prominent and less and more autonomous. No, kills.
No. We give you enough autonomy. It is enough now.
It's enough now at 5%.
No, but I think we gave like Malaysia. Like the only thing we did to Malaysia, for instance, Romania, was okay. Pay us taxes. We'll leave you alone. That's it. Just like we. That was literally it.
Well, Malaysia was like an autonomous region of Turkey that also sided with Hungary at some points. Then got
also Russia.
got betrayed by Hungary, and then got betrayed by Russia, then got allied back to the Ottomans. It was like it's weird.
Yeah, and then finally during the Russo-Turkish War in the 1880s, they finally gained their independence, like most other Balkan.
Well, they united with Moldavia and formed Romania too, I think.
Yeah, they were united. See,
well, they weren't.
We start. No, shut up. No, we're going back to the Syrian Civil War now. Because we literally just went from the Syrian Civil War to the Russo-Turkish War.
Well, I mean, that was you, brother, brought that up, not me.
Fuck you, nigga.
Whoa.
Shit, bye. Should I go?
Whoa. No more. Stop.
My bad.
Stop.
My bad.
I can't edit this up. You know that.
Rip.
Wow. Oh, it wasn't me, guys. It wasn't the person broadcasting this. Okay. You can't blame me.
Oh God.
Blame,
Words only have the power you give them, so.
blame the Turk.
Blame the Turk. Oh, you see one person die, blame the Turk, although it is made in America. Okay.
But wait, what?
Well, technically, I'm not a white individual that enslaved. Okay.
Okay. No more on this conversation after what you just said.
Okay. Let us go back to Syrian Civil War. So.
It goes from one. It's just one terrible thing to another.
What? Welcome to Turkish history. It's basically Turkish history in a nutshell. You invade me, I invade you.
And then I conquer you and then make you pay too much taxes.
Yeah. Basically.
Well, like the only reason America wanted this was because of taxes in the first place, but because
Yes.
tax is bad, and then now we pay like 40% of our income to taxes, which is just ironic.
It's bullshit.
Gotta love having state, federal, and local taxes.
Wait, can you not choose like to pay which ones though? Like, do you not have the freedom to choose almost?
You can't pick which taxes you pay. You have to pay all of them.
I heard something about that though, like where people just don't pay taxes.
I mean, you can be arrested for that. It's called tax evasion.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, man. I heard some Americans be like, I ain't no to pay no goddamn taxes in Alaska.
I mean, if you don't make enough income, they're not gonna care about you anyway. You know what I mean? Like if you're a hippie that lives in the forest, they're not gonna worry about your income because A, you probably don't make any, and B, you're just a hippie in the middle of like the forest. But if a rich person were to evade taxes, then the IRS would be like, ha ha ha, I found you.
Hello, I see you no pay tax. Where did my phone go? I literally lost my phone. What?
My phone likes to stick to my thigh, so I just leave it on my thigh.
I do that sometimes, but not usually.
It just doesn't slide off. I mean, you can take it off, or it falls off, but if I move my leg, it just sticks there. There's too much friction. It's like, no, I'm not gonna move. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Alright, well, we only have 2 minutes left, so is there anything left that you would want to say about the conflict in Syria?
It's retarded like every other conflict. Nah, it's pretty, like, it's basically just it's the result of everything that you should not do in establishing a country.
And also, I can say that America is partly to blame for leaving their military equipment behind, which is what the ISIS is ISIS was using for a long time to fight.
And the YPG now, and the PKK, which continues to terrorize people.
Well,
so.
we sold actual equipment, recent equipment to the YPG. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but that
YPG.
equipment just went straight up to the PKK. Yeah.
For fighting with American guns.
Yeah, basically fighting Turks with American guns in the mountains.
And then the Turks are fighting them with American guns also, because America supplies guns to the Turkish.
No. We use mostly German guns actually, G3s.
Oh really?
We also use M4A1s, but mostly G3s. But now we're starting to produce our own assault rifle and our own equipment.
Lord knows it will just break down like the Ottoman